So now that we have two color options, we have flat color, and then we have our duotone color on top of that. The reason I separate those into two layers is to make it more dramatic. So for instance, I can take my duotone layer and I can use adjustments, any adjustments I like, hue, saturation, levels. I'm just using levels here and push them a little bit darker. I can take my flat color layer, go to hue, saturation, for instance, make it a little bit lighter, make it a little bit darker, maybe saturate it a little bit more colorful. That helps with the blood for sure. You can even shift its hue, more towards the yellows, more towards the blues. And all of that's happening behind my line work. And what's nice about digital painting is you can always compare it. See the difference between what you had and what you try. So I think I like those changes. Now what I can do is show you what soft edge duotone looks like. Now you don't usually use these two together. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to turn off my cut edge duotone and show you instead what soft edge duotone might look like. And the only difference is I'm going to use a different type of brush. It's more like spray painting. So I might select my shadow colors the same way. Just darker versions of what's already there. But now with my brush, I'm going to use a soft-edged brush. So the hardness, pretty soft, maybe a nice large brush. And I can kind of airbrush in my shadows. And I can do it at different opacities. I usually like to do it this way. So I can have a soft shadow there, soft shadow here, soft shadow. And it's less exact. Definitely less exact than cut edge. But it's a little bit more atmospheric. And especially at low opacities, you can kind of build a lot more depth to your color with soft edge duotone. Now some artists will use soft edged on soft textures and cut edge on more like crisp textures. It's just whatever illustration style you want. I can also take that same color, push it even darker, and then paint with that low opacity, kind of deepen my duotone in certain areas, like especially in the sockets of the eyes. And I can do the same thing with the teeth. And something I like most about Photoshop is I'm able to steal colors from ones I've already used. So because I'm painting at a lower opacity, I'm getting kind of dirty teeth here. At any time, I can hold down Alt-Option and steal a color that I'm painting with and get kind of these in-between values. If I want to steal the red and paint that in, I can at a low opacity. Kind of paint some blood between the teeth. But you have to be careful where you select. And so this gets to be a little bit more like just using watercolor behind black ink work for, say, a comic book. It's just a different way of going about it. Might decide I even want a little bit of that blood red in the eye sockets, in the shadow of the nose. Help make things pop out a little. At the gum line. So it's still digital coloring. Really, anything that's behind real or implied outlines is digital coloring. Eventually, you can keep building this up until you don't need outlines at all, and it's looking pretty gruesome, and you would have digital painting. So that's very different than the cut edge duotone. This is just what's called soft edge. Now if I blend the two together, I get this, and that can work. I have some cut edge aspects and some soft edge aspects, but it might start to look a little confused. You know, that's a soft edged approach, that's a cut edge approach. But the beauty of keeping these all in separate layers is I can play them against each other. I can do different overlay modes and see what a good balance might be. That's kind of interesting. All right, now let's save that. Now I'm happy with my two different duotone solutions. Starts with flat color, cut edge duotone, and then soft edge duotone, then black line. So I'm throwing everything at this. Now I want some special effects. Now I want to make it look like there's things glowing in the eyes. So this is the only time that I have to make a new layer above my black line layer. And something I actually like to do sometimes is to color over the top of the black lines. So if I'm going to use red here, I'm going to take it back to 100% opacity. I'm going to start with hard edged, and I'm just going to draw some jewel shapes, you know, in the eyes. Just
that one combines both the color red and your black, though, right?
I'm on a layer on top of my black line, so this is completely new and on its own. So I have blank white underneath. I have flat color on top of that. I have different duotone color options on top of that. I have my blacks on top of that, and now on top of the blacks, I'm going to start painting over and replacing the color of the black. In printing, it's called a color hold, because you're holding out the blacks to let this color come through from different parts of the printing process. But in digital color, you can just paint right over the top of your black lines. So kind of like 3D glasses. I'm going to do kind of this light blue jewel in one eye and the red jewel in the other. So that's the flat color. And that looks kind of interesting. Piques my interest. But now to make it really look like it's glowing, I can do lots of other things. And I can do this with new layers on top, but I really like to play with color holds and use some of the digital effects. So I'm going to double click on layer 1, and I'm going to play with these layer styles. First of all, I'm going to give it a stroke, a black outline, make it a little thick. So there you go, that helps set it into the rest. But then the fun ones are like the outer glow. And I'm going to make its outer glow spread out. Ooh. Really strong. Problem is, those colors don't quite work, right? I want a color that matches the color of that jewel, maybe a little bit brighter. And maybe I just really want to spread it far. Now it's taking its shape from the jewel.
45 seconds.
So that's what's called a color hold, and I can turn off those effects as I like. I can also modify them. So if I take my opacity down on the stroke, it will look shinier. Now just on top of that, I do a little soft edge duotone or hard edge duotone because they are jewels, and I'll paint in with lighter colors. Little highlights. Don't want to overdo it. Little goes a long way in the highlight department. And then I can do a duotone shadow in there as well. All right.